I am Ivan Pastine. That's me. We have an email for the class. This goes to a senior tutor who will, because a million people here, so he'll sort through them. By and large, we are going to be having in-class stuff, so ideally, you would ask your questions during, after, before class, or during the office hours, and there'd be no need for emails, but I know sometimes you get, something happens where you can't come to class, and therefore you have to go through the email. So there you go. Right. So, but by and large, I would really, really prefer people ask in class. I can tell you for sure, if you have a question, if you're confused about something, if you don't understand what's going on with the exam, or you don't understand what's going on with a section of the course, I can guarantee you at least 30% of the class is with you on that, and I would guess more like 70%, because I'm just sort of teaching, I'm lecturing at a huge crowd. I don't know what people understand, what they don't understand, unless you tell me, right? And I'm happy to go over things again. I'm happy to do it a different way, but I gotta know, and mostly, Irish students. You've been in Ireland before, right? Students don't talk much, and so I don't have much to go on in terms of what people understand, whether I'm going too slow, going too fast. So please, please, please tell me. It's an in-person class, so in-person is the way to go. Okay. Lectures are in person, hopefully. I will have office hours on Thursday from 4 to 5, so we have 2 one-hour classes during the week, and then that second hour on Thursday, I will just hang out here and people can ask questions. Hopefully you'll stay and get all your questions answered. That's the idea. We can also do appointment. We can do it via Zoom. We can do this. We can do that. The other thing, just let me know when you need to be. Okay. Now, if you wait till the day before the exam, I'm going to be overwhelmed, right? But if you're not doing it the day before the exam, if it's during normal times, I got all the time in the world for you. I'm like a paid tutor in a way. Like you could come, no one's going to be in my office hours in real life. You have an hour a week that I am one-on-one, happy to tutor you on all this stuff, and so take advantage, right? Very few people do, but do. Okay. We have a book. We have a book, for better or worse. And our book is this one. It's a great book. You can tell it's a great book because this guy's one of the authors, and so it must be really, really good. Obviously, best book that's ever made. So we got what's his name? Ben Bernanke, who was the chairman of the U.S. Central Bank for quite a while. So that's the book. It's this book here. Now, this is my book, and obviously I would like you to buy my book because, again, it is the best book by definition. However, the honest fact of the matter is all introductory textbooks in economics are the same. Don't tell my publisher I said so, but honestly, they're the same. There's the material that has to be covered was largely standardized in 1947 by Paul Samuelson, and it's things diverge after the introductory class, but largely introductory classes are the same, which means you don't have to get my book. You can get any book. You can get a used book. You can get 2 editions older. I don't mind. I will not be hurt. I think it is useful to have access to a book. I'll talk about how to use a book in a bit, but I think it's useful to have access to a book, but it does not have to be the latest, greatest. If you get something from 1972, it will largely be the same as this stuff. So don't waste your money. Get, obviously, my book, a used version of my book is the way to go, but a used version of any other book is fine. You don't have to yourself own it, but you should have somebody, like if there's 2 or 3 friends, get a book between you, and that's great. But I think it's useful. As a student, I never found it super useful, but I know lots of other students do find them useful. I wasted a ton of money as a student on books. Anyway, you, but I think a book is useful. Doesn't have to be this one. Now, if you're getting some other potsy book, some inferior book written by an inferior author, probably world famous, but inferior nonetheless. If you're getting an inferior book, by all means do. things to look for to make sure that you got the right material, right? Because it's easy, like you don't know the stuff. Like I can glance through and say, yeah, this is the book. But for you guys, you're just learning it, so it's not obvious which book is the appropriate book. What you want to look for is go through the index, and it should talk about calculating GDP and consumer price index. We're not going to spend as much time on that stuff as we did in previous years, but still, we're going to talk about it. GDP is gross domestic product. We'll start it today, so you'll see. Every introductory textbook, macroeconomics textbook has that. If the textbook you're looking at does not have that, that is a clue that it is not an introductory macroeconomics textbook. Maybe it's intermediate, maybe it's microeconomics, maybe it's something else. So there's your first clue, right? Make sure it has that. Make sure it has the Keynesian multiplier, the cross diagram. It's also known as what? The government spending multiplier. We're going to be doing that. And so your book should have that. Again, everything since 1947 has that, except for a few weirdo right-wing textbooks that came out mid-70s. But other than that, they all have it. Should talk about money supply, should talk about money demand, and look for short-run aggregate supply. There's a whole model about this. We're going to talk about it for a while, but your book should have that. And if your book has that stuff, you're good with any old textbook. It can be 10 years old, it can be 30 years old, it can be different author, you're all going to be good. There'll be a few sections where there might be issues, but they will be small and they won't be going on for ages. So you don't have to get my book. Get a book, I think. Since you can get a cheap book, why not? Right? Go in with a couple of friends, and that'll, I think, maybe be helpful. You'll tell me as we go along. Students care about grading. As you should, I suppose, but I hate it, you hate it, we all hate it together. We're going to have 2 MCQ exams. One of them is going to be in week 7, I'm hoping. I'm trying to get a room, so we don't know exactly yet, but I'm thinking week 7. This is week 2, by the way, for those of you keeping track at home. So week 7 is towards the end of October. It's going to be in the evening, time, date to be announced. It's going to be worth 35% of your grade, and there will be a 65% 2-hour MCQ in the RDS, like those horrible things are. It's going to be the way. Now, in terms of grading, I will give you all of the old MCQs, going back 20 years now. So you will have lots and lots of practice questions. I am not trying to do anything tricky on the exam. I'm trying to do basically, do you understand the material sort of stuff. You'll have plenty of material to do well on the exam. Right? If you do those old exams, you'll be golden, I think. Right? I don't know, you'll tell me at the end, but that is my experience in the past. So I don't think there'll be any surprises, and I don't think it'll be, obviously you have to prepare for exams, and it's horrible, and you have to do it. But if you do that, if you come to class, I think you'll be fine. But you'll tell me at the end. But there's certainly nothing that's intentionally tricky about this. This is intended to be a straightforward class to do well in. It's not, this is, your commerce students, by and large, a few exceptions, but by and large, your commerce students, this is not core to your degree. This is, you should know something about macroeconomics. And so I want to check, do you know something about macroeconomics? I do not want to be the class that makes or breaks your degree. That's not my intention. Obviously, some people will do well, some people will do poorly. That is the nature of life. But if you're showing up to class, if you're preparing for the exams, I don't see any obstacle, and I certainly don't intend any obstacle to you doing well. Right? And I'm allowed to let everyone do well. It's not like I have to do a curve or anything. Yeah, people... There's no reason that you can't do well in the course. It's not intended to be tricky. It's intended to be straightforward. But you do have to learn this stuff. Right? This is the idea. Okay? But I'm not trying to separate the best commerce students from the worst commerce students or any of that. I'm not doing that because, again, it's not the central course of your degree. It's something that's useful to know for your degree. Okay. We are, however, using the alternative linear conversion grade scale. Yeah. That's exciting. Everyone thrilled? And you're wondering, which conversion grade scale is this, Ivan? There are so many in UCD. This is the one that you were really, really hoping it wouldn't be. This is the one that's nastiest, most unpleasant to students. This is the economics department's policy to use this. This is what we're using. On the other hand, it's MCQ questions. You'll have loads and loads of old questions, so there's no reason not to do well enough on this scale as well. You can look it up, but it's MCQ. There's no negative marking on anything, so hopefully everything will be straightforward. Okay. So here's my little spiel on how to do well in class, and like you do you. Like if you have a system that involves 2 shots of cocaine in the morning and then napping all afternoon, and then going to the pub, and then studying for 15 minutes, and that's working for you, just for your life, maybe give up or cut down on the cocaine. But other than that, academically, I got nothing to argue with you. If it's working for you, if you've got a system that's working for you, by all means do that system. Okay? I can tell you what worked for me back in the day. So back in the day, I went to college, and university, the jargon's different here. I was in the US, and I promptly flunked out. And they asked me to please go away and to never return. And that happened in retrospect because I wasn't caring about the stuff and I wasn't doing the work, and most importantly because I wasn't going to class. And then went into the military, cleaned a lot of toilets, drove a ship for a while, and then I got out and I went back to university, not as good a university, but to university nonetheless, and I got straight A's. And the difference between me when I was flunking out and me when I was getting straight A's was I just showed up to class. I cannot emphasize how important it is to go to class. And it's because I'm a genius, and if you hear words from my mouth, they will change your life. No, that's not why. Lecturers are boring. Lectures are boring. They go on and on. They repeat the same thing 27 times. They lose their train of thought, and they circle around, and it can be a seeming waste of time. I've been in lectures, you've been in lectures. At this stage, we all know the drill. Some lecture is better than others, but by and large, you go to a class and you don't feel like you got a lot out of it. Right? You've been there. You're all here today, so I suppose you're better than most. But by and large, that's the deal. Nevertheless, going to the classes is super important. And the reason is, I think, because if you show up at class 2 times a week, all the way through the semester, it just forces you to be thinking about the subject. You're mostly trying to stay awake, and you're hungry, and you gotta pee, and all that stuff. But you're kind of vaguely thinking about the subject twice a week, consistently, over a long period of time. And that is all the difference. If you take the same amount of time and you cram it in at the end of the semester, it is not the same at all. It doesn't sink in the same way. So doing it repetitively in small chunks all the way through the semester is a huge help. And plus, you're in the lecture with a bunch of other people. And at the end of the lecture, you say, "My God, Ivan is a wanker." And you say, "Oh," and then you're walking out and you see the cute guy and you say, "Oh, well, we're in the class together. Let me say to the cute guy, isn't Ivan a wanker?" And he says, "Oh my God, I cannot believe what a wanker he is. Let me count the wanker ways of Ivan." You go through it and, okay, that's kind of fun. But look, you will never forget the 7 wanker ways after that. You know them, right? Because it's attached to a person, it's attached to an event. If you're sitting in your lonesome home, you don't get that. You don't get the gossiping about how he fell down, how his fly was open the entire time. You don't get any of that. And that, in the back of your brain, attaches to the ideas and makes everything so much easier. Okay? Also, when you're looking at an actual human, for what he's worth, and I say something really dumb, well, you might pick up, that's really dumb. And you want to argue about it in your head, right? You can actually argue with me too, that's fine. But I would suggest, like as you're going through, not just this class, but every class, is you shouldn't be saying, "What do I need to know for the exam?" What you should be saying is, do I agree with this stupid stuff they're spewing at me? Right? And you should argue with it. Do I agree? Don't I agree? Does it make sense to me? Doesn't it make sense? Is it missing something important in life? Is it not? And if you're kind of arguing with it all the way through, then you will never forget it, right? Even if you don't agree, you'll understand it because you're arguing in your head about it. And that's much easier when you're seeing an actual human say the dumb things than when you're watching a video of someone saying the dumb things, right? So I suggest very strongly attending lectures each week, not because I'm a genius, not because everything that I say is so wonderful, but just because it forces you to think about it and it gives you your brain things to attach to it, and so you remember it so much better. Okay? At least that was my experience. Like, I was no different as a human when I was flunking out than when I was getting straight A's. It was really just going to class that was different. Right? I didn't study more, none of that. And in my experience, a bazillion years, I'm old, bazillion years teaching this stuff, I don't know of any students, I could be wrong, but I don't know of any students that I've ever had that were routinely showing up that didn't do well in class. Now, sometimes people don't do as well as they'd like, and sometimes people don't do as well as the effort they put in. But nobody did really poorly that was showing up on a regular basis. Again, not because I'm a genius, but just because they're thinking about it twice a week. Okay? That's my spiel for how you live your life. You do you, of course. Okay? Okay? Again, if the cocaine is working for you and they're never showing up, like, don't let me talk you out of it. It's expensive. It's not good for your health. Anyway, but other than, academically, I don't mind. Like, I'm not going to take attendance. I'm not going to, like, if you've never come to class and at the end you ask for help, I got no problems. I was the guy who didn't come to class early on. I don't think that's a judgment on you as a human. It's just, that's what you did. We'll try to get you through as much as possible. It's not like a judgment thing. But I think from me, showing up to class is the biggest thing that you can do to do well in. Hey, it's boring, I know. But anyway, that's my little spiel. Now, I am going to try to make videos. You can see I'm trying. We will see whether it works. Like, it's a thing. There's endless technical troubles. I cannot guarantee there will be videos because there are always technical troubles, but I am doing my best to make decent videos for you guys because I know there's a housing crisis. There's some people who can't come through no fault of their own. And they're also, like, one of the things we learned in COVID is that when everyone was, couldn't come to school and we had videos, it was really good for some students and it was really terrible for others, just depending on their nature. Right? Some people would watch the videos 3 times and do much better than they otherwise would. Other people hate being around people, and so that got a whole stress off. I don't know why, but some people did really well with videos, and so if that's you, yeah, we would like to provide you with that opportunity. So I'm doing my best to make videos, but I can't promise there'll be a video for every class. I'm going to do my best. Okay? All right. It'll take like a day or 2 after class before I get them posted because there's editing and stuff. But if you're using the videos, though, try to make use of this fact that thinking about things over a period of time in small chunks is so much better than a big doing it all at once. So try to put yourself on some kind of schedule, and you're sort of on your own for doing that, and do it in small chunks. Don't do the week's worth of stuff, but do it in 2 separate days, just so that you get the benefit of repetition of thought. Okay, I'm going to put everything under the sun on Brightspace, so I'm going to put all the old exams on Brightspace. I'm going to put the videos linked on Brightspace, and I'm going to put the slides on Brightspace as well. Do not make the mistake of thinking that the slides are the lecture. The lecture is me. I am the star. It is all about me and my smiling face. It is not about these or nothing. It's all about, they're pretty sparse. You'll see. There's not a lot of information on them. It's more just like, here's what we're talking about now. But it's not the complete information. So if you're just sort of looking over the slides, that will be a problem for you in some sections. Okay? It's a good way to go back and say, do I remember this? Do I remember this? Do I remember this? What am I missing? That's very nice, but it's not like a way to learn. Or it's certainly not intended to be a way to learn. Hey, again, if you got a system that works for you, you don't want me to screw it up. But okay. There's not going to be much in the way of assignments. I'll give a few assignments just to give you something to sort of test your knowledge, but I'm not going to be grading them because a bazillion students. But I'll give them and I'll give answer keys so that you can check that you're sort of keeping up and you're understanding what's going on. That'll be probably end of next week we'll have our first. But they won't be graded and I won't be collecting them. But it's something for you to see whether you're keeping up or not. Okay. Take the midterm exam. Oh, for goodness sake, take the midterm. I don't know why I have to say this, but every year there's people who don't take the midterm exam, and that's zero. And it's multiple choice, and there's no negative marking. So if you go in and you guess, you'll do better than not taking it. So show up for the test. Using a textbook. Okay. I'm not following the book page by page because the authors are stupid, but because it's a short class, right? We can't do everything in the book, and so we're picking and choosing what stuff we're doing. I would recommend to people, like for all, and this is me, like you do you again, but for all courses, it's nice to have a textbook, but you should not sit down and read it. As a textbook author, I can tell you how it works. What you do is you've got this book that's going to be used in classes all over the place, right? And there's going to be thousands of students. And each student is an individual, and each student is going to get lost in some different place, right? And what you have to do is in the book, you have to go into a lot of detail, because if a student is lost in that particular spot, you have to get them unlost. Right? So you have to go into a lot of detail about every little thing, because every little spot is someplace a student might get lost. But what it means is that all of these textbooks, not just economics textbooks, but all the introductory textbooks, have way more detail than is really necessary for any individual person, right? Because you got to get people unlost at every little bit. And so if you're just reading it, it goes on and on and on and on, and it will make you feel like things are hard that are actually easy, right? Because if it wasn't hard, how come he went on for 5 pages about this thing? Whereas in fact, most people would see that thing and say, yeah, that's obvious, and move right along. But he goes on for 5 pages talking about that thing because there's somebody somewhere who is going to get lost right there, and we need to get them unlost, right? Which means that if you start reading the book, just cover to cover, in my personal opinion, what you'll do is you'll make the whole thing seem harder than it is. And in fact, economics is intended and is supposed to be and actually is really, really, really easy. Now, if you talk to people like from last year that had it or who have done economics, in general, you'll get sort of 2 sorts of people. You'll get people who said, it was the easiest class I ever took. My God, it was so easy. What a waste of time. And other people will say, it was so hard, I got stuck, and I have no idea what the hell he's talking about. Okay? And there tends to be very few people in between, because it's very easy once you get the idea, and before you get the idea, it's kind of impossible. You can memorize 100,000 things, I suppose, but unless you get the idea of how to think this way, you're going to have a hard time. Okay? So if you're having a hard time, that suggests that you didn't sort of turn your brain in such a way that it's easy, that it's intended to be easy. So if you're finding it easy, that's great. Don't read about that stuff, because things are going well for you. Like, don't let the book mess it up. But if you're not understanding something, then you go to the book and you try to get unstuck from that, right? So it's more like a reference book for when you get stuck. You're stuck, look at the book, figure it out. And if you can't figure it out from the book, obviously come to me and we'll sort you out. Okay? Okay. There we go. There's end of chapter exercises. I say do the end of chapter exercises because this is what teachers have to say. I don't know it's the law. But, if they work for you, do them. If they don't work for you, don't do them. Right? This is as always. The one thing I will say is that as you're going through, figure out, we'll have the first exam, right? And we'll have a few assignments going up to the first exam. And say to yourself, am I getting the rewards for the effort I'm putting in? If you never showed up to class and you never read the book and you never did anything and you kind of glanced through the PowerPoints and then you went into the exam and you didn't do well, you know what the problem is. You don't need me to tell you that. And so, yeah, you're getting a reward commensurate with the effort that you put in. But if you're putting in a bit of effort and you're still doing terrible on the exam, that's a problem and we need to sort you out. Right? And if you're putting in loads and loads and loads and loads of effort and you're only getting a B+, that's also a problem, right? Because you're not getting a reward commensurate with the effort that you put in. And so there's probably a way you're thinking about it wrong, and we can sort that out, and so to make it easier so that you can get the reward commensurate with your effort. Okay? The only way that that can happen is if you come to me not during the exam time, right? Like the week before the exam, I'm going to be swamped. But like, yeah, after the midterm, you say, okay, that didn't go as well as I thought it would. Come to me and we'll try to sort out where your thinking is causing you difficulties. Because ideally, we want your reward, first of all, we want it to come easy. And secondly, if you're working harder than the reward you're getting, than the grade you're getting, that's a problem and we want to sort that out. Okay. Very few people take me up on this offer, and some of them who do take me up on the offer say it worked out. I don't know that they all agree on that, but I will try. I will try to sort you out. Okay. So I would suggest, now this is a class that you probably could do okay by memorizing. Not all of it, but a good chunk probably you could. I know Irish students as a group are really, really good at memorizing in a way that I just can't imagine. And that's because of the Leaving Cert system, right? You guys all did well on the Leaving Cert, and so you're good at what you need to do do well on the Leaving Cert. And one of those things for a lot of you is memorization. And so you're very good at memorization by and large. And so it's very attractive to approach each new thing by this technique that you're good at. Okay? I would suggest that you should try to get away from that as much as possible. It's very hard to break the old habits, of course, but to the extent that you can get away from that, your life going forward will be much better. Right? Some parts you could do with memorization without any trouble, but other parts are quite difficult. So we're going to have, for example, a story about how the economy works. It's going to be a story about how firms and workers interact with each other that causes recessions and booms, and it's going to be a little story about how the world works. And one thing you could do is you could sit down and memorize all the things that I list. So I could say, what happens if France gets richer? And you could memorize how that works in our little story and what that does to the Irish economy. You could do that. And then you could say, well, what happens if French people start liking Irish products and they start liking Guinness? And you could memorize that. And sorry. But of course, there's a million of these things that I could say. Like, lots of things could happen in the world, and you could wonder how does that affect the Irish economy? And so, in essence, there's a million things that you'd have to memorize that way. Whereas, if you just understood the story, then whatever new thing I threw at you, you could just figure it out. Right? And so it's a lot easier to do it by understanding than it is by memorization. Right? Now, in practice, I have limited imagination, so there's a limited number of things that I'm actually likely to ask, and so you could probably do it by memorization. But it's kind of useless at that point. Like, what did you learn in the class if you memorized a bunch of stuff like that? If you understood the story, then you could apply it to anything going forward in your life as well. And of course, not only the class, but life in general can't be approached by memorization. So it's good to understand, right? And also, as we go into third year and fourth year, it becomes less and less useful to approach things by memorization. So if you can get out of the habit, this is a good class to try, because first of all, we have a bunch of stuff where the stories are pretty simple, but a little weird. Like, you have to turn your head a little bit to see them. But we have a bunch of stories that you can approach by understanding, that make best sense by understanding. And if you sort of get in the habit of that, that's going to set you in good stead going forward. And it's not intended to be a super hard course, so this is a good time to practice new things. Right? Okay, that's my little spiel for that. Questions about the organization of the course in general or specific?